This is the Future of the Future show. I am your host, Mateo Berbejicio. Today, I am joined by Joe Dunleavy, a technology leader with deep experience in software development and innovation. Joe has built his career at the intersection of strategy, engineering, and emerging technology, and today he's helping teams harness the power of AI to transform the way software is built and delivered. In this conversation, we will explore Joe's career journey and the milestones that brought him to his current role. We'll dig into how his team is already using AI in their work, the changes AI is driving in software development today, and what the future might look like in the next few years. We will also talk about the biggest opportunities and risks AI introduces for developers and engineering teams, the evolving skill sets needed to succeed, and how culture plays a role in adapting to this new era. And finally, Joe will share his perspective on what it takes to thrive in a leadership role like his. Whether you are a developer, a team lead, or just curious about where software is headed, this is a conversation packed with insights you won't want to miss. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much, Mateo. I'm looking forward to it, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Joe, let's get started with the very basics. What do you do today for a living?
Uh, so my title is Regional CTO for Europe for Endava. So Endava is a global technology services company. I oversee the European side of that. So we have a fairly strong presence across all of Europe, both East and West Europe. So places like Romania, Moldova, Macedonia, as well as closer to client locations like the UK and Ireland, where I'm based. Part of that is just anything that kind of comes under the remit of a chief technology officer these days. So it's a fairly broad church. But I suppose the probably exciting to this conversation is I also oversee our AI pod, which is focused around the use of AI for our clients, as well as our own adoption of AI. For all of our staff, we have roughly about 11,000 people globally. So we're very interested in how AI makes people more productive and helps them in their role. So that's kind of at a high level, that's kind of what my remit looks at. But a lot of my daily delivery is around AI, the use of it, and how do you leverage the power of it.
I love it. How did you get to where you are today? What are the most important milestones that led you to where you are today?
So I've always been in the technology side of the career path. I would have studied computer science back over 20 years ago at this point. So I was always interested and passionate, I kind of suppose, about technology. I suppose it's kind of been a little bit more cool now or in vogue to be a geek. I was always kind of on that side of the thing. I liked gaming. I went into computer science. I always had an interest in computers. So I pursued a career in computer science. That's what I studied. Started my career in Microsoft, and always, I suppose, been really interested in technology, and had a proper interest in it. I think if you're genuinely interested in technology and what value it can bring and the good that it can bring, I do think you kind of ride from one tech trend to the next. So, I suppose in terms of career path wise, an interest in lifelong learning. So I've studied quite a bit, continue to do so, whether that's certification or other things. But I suppose, you need to be interested in what you do. You need to have a love and a passion for it. It's kind of hard if you don't. So technology has always been something I've had a real interest in. And I generally am an optimist. So I like to always think about the impact that technology can have. And then going along on the journey, pay attention for the opportunities. The opportunities, they present themselves. If you're not paying attention, they probably pass you by. But the last thing I'd say, Matteo, is it's still very much it's a people business. Technology is a people business. Most success in life is a people business. So I suppose I put a lot of focus and energy on building strong relationships with people that serve you well, whether that's your team or people in your career path, and certainly enjoy it. But look for those opportunities along the way, because they're always there in my experience. But if you're not paying attention, they pass you by. And then the last thing I'd say is be lucky along the way. And luck sometimes can be just being in the right place at the right time, but
Yeah.
having that I suppose interest to be there. So that's I'm not sure if that's useful, but that's kind of I suppose a little bit of my career path to date.
And how much you were always building relationships, always learning, always trying to, not only seeing those opportunities come by and taking those opportunities. You talked about that. Um, but do you think it was both getting prepared but also nurturing your network? Is that how some of your opportunities came about, just by having a strong network?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my entire career path has been based on relationships, where I've ended up going in the companies that I've worked in. There's always been a thread. The one thread that carries through from my very first job has been I ended up working in places that I worked with people previously. So a lot of the
Got it.
time, and it's I suppose just having that relationships, um, and harnessing them and deliver. You know, you have to invest in relationships. It's not just a case of, you know a person. It's never a good idea to reach out to somebody when you need something. Your relationships have to be something that you are invested in and they invest in, because when there is a point in time that you want to have somebody connect you in with the right person, if the only time you ever contact them is for political or personal gain, it's not a great way to build relationships. So I
Yeah.
think it's an important part, right? It has to be an authentic interest in those relationships, because otherwise it becomes transactional. I don't think anybody wants to be the other end of a transactional relationship.
I agree, and very much so. And one of the things I've seen in my career is it's never one to one, right? You are investing in a lot of relationships, and you never know which is the one that is going to give you something, right? You just gotta sort of trust the universe, do good, build relationships, and be a fountain. And sometimes some people will need you.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. So you have to have the relationships that you can leverage, but on the same time, you need to be able to be willing to invest and give back as well. I mean, I've always done, I was in the startup ecosystem quite some time ago, but I always continue to provide mentorship to startups and that type of thing. And I'm not saying that to go give shout outs to me or build up. It's more the reality is like I do that because it's important to me. I'm investing in the local community of startups here in Ireland, and the reality is, you never know when those paths will cross again. But it can't always be you drawing from your relationship. You also have to invest in those relationships and the community that's around you, because you never know. To your point, at what point somebody will cross a path again that can be really, really powerful for you.
Yeah. Have you always worked in Ireland, or have you worked in other countries as well, or have you always resided in Ireland?
No, I've worked in Ireland for the majority of my career, but I also lived in the United States as well. One of the companies I worked for in Ireland was a subsidiary of a US company, and I was lucky enough with my wife and kids to move out to the US and live there and work there for 3 years from 2012 to 2015. So we experienced what it's like to move out of your country, move with your family, and experience living in a new location and working in a new location. So it was a really, really nice experience. I travel quite a bit, whether that's for work or personally. So I always love getting to see new places, but the ability to go and work somewhere else was a really nice thing to experience also.
How much has Ireland changed since the moment you got started in technology to today? It's grown quite a bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's unrecognizable, to be quite honest with you. The Ireland of 2001, 2002, when I was coming out of university, was there was technology jobs available. The majority of them, though, were very much centered around Dublin, and they would have been with a handful of kind of large employers. Intel has had a strong presence in Ireland for a long time and continue to do so. Microsoft, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the second largest facility Microsoft has outside of Seattle. Is still Dublin to this day. I was lucky enough where I started my career, but when I think about that period versus now, it was probably three to four large companies, a lot of foreign direct investment, United States technology companies had come to Ireland to offer up roles, and now you look at Dublin and Ireland today, and it has spread beyond the region of just Dublin, and it is very much a who's who of technology companies. I mean, there's many reasons for that, tax incentives and other things that we'll not get into today because we could go down that rabbit hole from the podcast on its own. But you have pretty much, you name any technology company or any health tech company, particularly United States based, there's a strong presence here in Ireland and they employ tens of thousands of people. The other nice part about it is just to wrap this part up is you've now also seen Irish people going into technology companies. Many nationalities come to the country to work here. Ireland's a much more diverse place as a result, which I think is it can only be a positive thing. But you've also got some of those people spinning out and starting up their own companies as well. So you've now got a bit of a tech ecosystem. When I did my startup, when I was involved with a couple of lads, and it wasn't my company, I was the first employee. But compare the startup ecosystem in Ireland today to that, it's pretty vast difference because there's a maturity now of talent and a maturity of technology delivery that happens in Ireland. That means it's a huge part of the success of Ireland as it stands today.
I love it. It's very inspiring and saving the difference. Of course, Europe is Europe and South America is South America. But I live in Uruguay. Uruguay is a small country within South America, and Ireland is a small country within Europe, right? So it's a North Star as well. When we look at Ireland and the things that it has achieved, we always see it with a lot of pride. Um, Joe, how is your team using AI today? I know it's a loaded question, right?
Yeah.
You said more than 10,000 employees across the world, and I know
Yeah,
it's a,
so it varies quite a bit. So let me talk about it because there's kind of two sides to that coin. We're a technology services company, so some of our people are developing AI solutions for clients, and we've been doing that for. It feels like AI was invented when OpenAI and generative AI kind of came to the fore. But as any of your listeners will know, and as me and you talked about, I mean, AI has been around and been delivering technology value for many, many, many years 10, 15, 20 years, in fact. But we would have people doing pure AI solutions delivery for clients. So some are doing software engineering roles associated with machine learning support, natural language processing, synthetic data creation for ML training. Some people, that's their job. They're data scientists, they're software engineers delivering AI solutions and that type of thing. The other side of that coin, and as part of what we call a keystone project inside of our own organization, is using generative AI for all of our staff to become more productive. So whether that's our marketing team, whether that's our legal team, whether that's our software engineers, we as a company, and this is we're a publicly listed company. So what I'll talk about is in the public domain. We are an OpenAI enterprise customer. So we've deployed ChatGPT Enterprise and the API across our entire organization. And we're also a partner of OpenAI. So what that means to your question is everybody, as part of their daily job, is using generative AI and in particular ChatGPT Enterprise and the latest and greatest models to deliver and be more productive. Where that really is interesting then, as well as where that bleeds into our software engineers doing their job, that's not them creating AI solutions. So what does an agentic AI delivery or an agentic AI developer look like? So how does a developer do their job leveraging some of these tools? Other tools are the likes of Windsurf and others. I hate throwing out names because it's not like we're not working on all of them because there's a lot of different tools out there, but we certainly have started to get our arms around the use of the likes of Codex from OpenAI and other things. And what does this idea of a software engineering team of people look like when supported by generative AI? So that's a really, really interesting space, and it's something we're actively involved in right now and trying to get our arms around because it's the use of AI is a bit of a catch-all term, but hopefully I've described it in a little bit more detail what that looks like depending on the role the person has inside Endava.
certainly. And let's get into what you just mentioned. Let's talk about the impacts that you already see in the role of software development, right? Because of AI. and the impacts that you see coming in the next few years?
Yeah, so this is when you start crystal balling, it's quite hard because the speed at which things are moving. But let me talk a little bit about, I suppose, what we've been doing and how quickly this has been moving along and where we're kind of going next. So the idea of AI supported software engineering, if you even talk like 6 to 12 months ago, the most cutting edge thing was code complete tools. And again, there's multiple, so I'll name one or two, but this is not like an advertisement for them and not an advertisement for others, but specifically to our world. We GitHub Copilot enabled a lot of our software engineering staff. And 12 months ago, even to a lesser extent, 6 months ago, but let's say 12 months ago, a code complete tool to make a software engineer more productive was a thing that people were excited about. So for those listening, if you haven't seen the Code Complete tool, think of it a little bit like when Microsoft Outlook or any other thing, when you go, hi, Matteo, how, and then it pops up, are you hit the tab button and it completes it for you. Great to speak to you, and it pops up last week. So it makes suggestions basically for how you want to complete your email, how you want to complete your Microsoft document, how you want to complete your Google Doc. We've all seen a prompt to basically, I know I've seen this before. Let me help Joe do his job, or Matteo help him do his job. Code Complete was very similar. So you are writing, you're in your IDE writing code, whether it doesn't matter if Java, .NET, whatever, Python, whatever the case may be. A Code Complete tool goes, oh, I've seen this before. This is a function. I expect 3 parameters. I'm just going to go ahead and suggest to Joe or Matteo, oh, I've seen this. These are the 3 parameters. Is this what? And you just go, that's what I'm looking for. You hit the tab button and it completes. So that had a certain amount of productivity boosting as a result of using these code complete tools. Now, you don't always have to accept those code completion suggestions. You can decide to, no, I'm just going to write it myself. But ideally, in an ideal world, you can use these code complete tools to help you in being more productive. Those code complete tools often work with many different models. This is not an open AI play versus anybody else. If you're in GitHub Copilot, you can choose Anthropic models, you can choose OpenAI models. It really doesn't matter. There's different models available. Fast forward though now to today with tools like I mentioned Windsurf, which we've been working with for the past couple of months. And we are now at the point whereby it's more about prompting against a engine for what it is you're looking to build, with the context of what you're looking to build, the language that you prefer to use, the cloud provider that you're looking to deploy on. And you're starting to have not just code completion, but full uh, functions in many cases, or full stacks of code being generated and created. Again, you can choose the model that you use and so on, but we've rapidly shifted from code completion, which was kind of a single digit kind of productivity boost, to a world whereby you're now talking about software engineers enabled off the back of solid prompts to be able to actually create like chunks of code. And again, it's very hard to determine what's a chunk, what's a function, and get into the semantics of it. But we're in a world now whereby you can have a proper, almost like a paired programming analogy going on. But the paired programming in this case is an AI agentic thing sitting beside you, helping you complete and write code, which is, a dramatic shift in the last 6 to 12 months. And the speed of which we're seeing is not slowing down. If anything, there's more coming. You've got the likes of Devon, you've got Codex now from OpenAI, you've got Anthropic, who have a lot of models focused specifically on software engineering. I'm leaving some out, and I don't mean to. I'm not advertising one as better over the other. I'm just talking specifically about what we've been doing inside Endava, and it's a significant shift because you're talking about productivity boosts quite substantially from code complete to actual helping you write code. It's still human in the loop. I'll finish on this, Matteo. You still have to have human in the loop. You still have to have the quality checks. You still have to ensure that you're building for enterprise scalability and security and all the other things. But what we are talking about now is the ability for software engineers to be more and more productive using some of this tooling. And then in a case like Endava, how we can service more clients with the same amount of staff that we have. So why can it not be our revenue can be larger but without substantially growing the headcount that we have. That's where I think the messaging is shifting to. I think that's where the conversation is shifting to. And this is not unique to Endava, whether it's us or some of our competitors. All of the client services delivery models are in the same consideration right now, in the same conversation.
Can you, I know it's hard to put a number, on Code Complete, you said, single digits productivity increase, in complete agentic production of functions. It's a game changer. It's a different thing. I've seen some articles on some studies. There's the Stanford study that says
Yeah.
that on new, and it compares building something from scratch to working on legacy software, right? Um, can you put your fingers on a number? What are you seeing in your teams at least, and do you see that difference that the Stanford study made between new software and legacy?
Yeah, absolutely. So that I answer your question, the context is really, really important. There's a little bit of a how long is a piece of string conversation, but like let's break it down a little bit more. Certainly, if it's a greenfield, brand new application that you're developing, using an agentic approach towards delivery will net out a substantial increase. What's that percentage substantial? I'm weary, right? A lot of it depends on the ability for the engineer to prompt, the subject matter expertise that the company has to bring to the table. If you prompt against an agentic thing and say, build me a new mobile app to receive payments. If you have no payments expertise, I'm not sure you're going to be able to validate the output that it produces and not lose time trying to do the same. How do you test that, etc., etc.? So there is an element of along as a piece of string. But if what I would say is, if code complete was single digit percentages, agentic has tens of percentages. Now I'm hesitant to say it's 90% more productive because I think your listeners are likely aware on average, majority of developers don't spend more than 50% of their time doing actual coding. So if you take these tools in the use of coding, they can improve that 50%. But the job of a developer is a lot more than just building code. There's pipeline creation, CI/CD pipeline. There's the testing. There's getting it ready. There's all of the different levels of integration testing and so on. But for sure, agentic AI can significantly improve that productivity, particularly for greenfield. On the legacy, though, that's depending on how complex is it, what particular language are we talking about, is there documentation that explains it, is there spaghetti logic in there? I mean, so to give you a real world example, we are wrestling down with right now is what does an AI agentic delivery model look like when it's a COBOL mainframe technology from the 1970s? Um, so there is tools out there, and there is absolutely an approach that you can now take to having, because there's two parts to this agentic thing, and we're focused very much on the writing of code, but there's also tooling like Codex and others that allows you to go in and understand what's there. And that's a key critical point. I think that's where you're going to get another productivity boost is tooling that allows you to go in and so point your binoculars, if you will, in a technology world at this code base. What does this do? When was the last time this code was updated? How is this code linked in with other code? Does it call an API? In which case, what does that API do? That's where I think the importance, and I think that's where the real productivity boost comes from, is the use of AI not only to support the writing of code, but also supporting the that what initially you would call a discovery phase. How do I know what this code does if I haven't worked with it before? And I think when you combine it, that's where you can see the productivity boost be quite significant. But certainly, just to close this out, agree with what the Stanford position and research was talking about. There's plenty of others out there as well, but it's a lot easier to deploy and use AI in a greenfield application than compared to a very, very older, complex legacy piece of code. Not impossible, but there will definitely be a percentage difference.
How do you see?
I'm not dodging your question, by the way. I wouldn't.
Oh,
I
no,
don't
no,
think it
no.
would
You
be
you
fair. I don't think it'd be fair to put a percentage on it because it very much deviates depending on the context, right?
I asked the question knowing that putting a number to it's very difficult. So you gave me a great answer. So let's talk opportunities and risks, but I also want to talk about the the speed at which things are changing. There are voices now in the industry saying we might be getting closer to, okay, now we are, it's going to just even out a little bit. It's not going as fast as it was. GPT-5, people saying, it's amazing, but it wasn't what we were expecting. Some studies saying, hey, if you keep just adding more horsepower to the data centers and the chips and everything, it's not like it's going to, large language models might be hitting a certain limit.
Yeah.
Um, do you see a little bit of that? What do you think are the biggest opportunities and biggest risks for AI? Especially, let's continue the conversation within software development and engineering teams.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really great question, and it's a detailed one. I suppose a couple of things I would say. First of all, because we jump straight into the AI conversation, I think it's really important to make sure that you're solving the right problem first and foremost, right? Because we have had a lot of history of software engineering projects not being successful for many multitude of reasons, but one of them is often the actual opportunity or the challenge we were trying to address wasn't fully understood, and we went and developed a brilliant solution to the wrong problem. AI and people prompting against an agentic framework to build AI is not going to solve that problem. So I think that's a really, really important. That's still a challenge. The challenge of discovery, the challenge of understanding what it is we're actually trying to solve. What does it look like when we solve it? Because it's going to be very hard to actually know you've delivered it if you don't know why you're solving it in the first instance. Is still a big challenge. So AI alone cannot fix if you can't articulate what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it and what does good look like when it's delivered, AI alone will not solve that. So that's an important thing to kind of call out. So AI should not be used for AI's sake. It should still ultimately start with, let's solve the right problem. And we've a colleague here inside Endava, Richard Pugh, and he always says, let's not have AI brilliantly solve the wrong problem. And I think that's a brilliant line because I still think it's a challenge, right? Understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it is a prerequisite to anything. So that, with that being said, some of the challenges do I see, and so on to your question. There's a lot of models out there, and we continue to have more and more models. When we speak to clients, it's hard for them to know what should I invest in of all of the tools that are available. Do I pick Windsurf or do I pick Junie from JetBrains? Do I pick GitHub Copilot? Do I pick something else? Do I pick Anthropic models or do I use ChatGPT 5? There's a lot to that conversation, and there's a lot more. There's open source we didn't even touch upon. There's open source models out there now. We've got Meta have the Llama models. They're open source and also used for commercial gain for open source. OpenAI have now come out with their own open weight models. So I think the challenge is to crystallize this to your question. There's a lot coming at people, and it's not quite sure which of these things do I kind of use. Where do I invest my time? Where do I start in making that return on investment? Because nobody has a crystal ball to say, pick this tool, that's the right tool, and you're going to get the return. So that's a challenge for AI. Another challenge is, which use case do you start with? When you've got so many possible use cases, do I make my marketing team more productive in writing marketing material? Do I make my legal team more productive in helping with contract law, et cetera, et cetera? Do I use it for KYC in the financial services business of know your customer? Do I use it in fraud? It's always that hard part for clients, and it's something that we regularly engage with them is identifying the right particular use case, usually a low-hanging fruit use case to build momentum and kind of go from there. You don't want to start with or tackle the most complex idea as the starting point for your adoption of AI or use introduction of generative AI. So that's another challenge. And then the final challenge I mentioned is, as well as we've got the world of compliance and regulation. So we have the EU AI Act now. It's starting to become in place. It will become more enforced in the next couple of weeks and months inside Europe and also for clients that operate inside the European Union. There's strict criteria on the use of AI. It risk rates things, which you need to be having an awareness of. You need to have explainability of the AI. That's, again, yet another challenge. So when I look at the sheer volume of new things coming out, where do I start when potentially all of the opportunities in front of me can be solved? And I'm making quote marks for those that are not on video. Which one do I pick? And then you've got this regulation, and regulation is going to come in other parts of the jurisdiction, other parts of the world too. How do I balance all this challenges up? So the first thing I would say is, go into it with an open mind. You need to be experimenting. Doing nothing's not really a great option right now because the speed at which this technology is going. I do think there'll be some level of consolidation in the marketplace. I don't think we'll continue to see the sheer volume of investment in yet more models. I'm not sure if the world needs more models. I think it's more about the quality of the model and the use of the model is more important. I think the open source thing is one to watch. So that's the challenges. Then on the opportunities, what I'm really interested in on the opportunities, because a lot of people talk about the reductive nature of AI. Um, what I'm really interested in is when you put these tools in the hands of people, how many more startups are we going to have? How many more companies are we going to grow and create? Because one of the barriers to entry was if Matteo sitting on this podcast wants to create a startup but didn't have the technology background to build his MVP or her MVP, now all of a sudden you've got these tools that are now available to you. So I think an awful lot of the conversation happens on the reduction side. Less jobs, less opportunities, less challenges, challenges, challenges. And while there will be some of those challenges will have to be solved, I also don't think there's enough conversation happening about the opportunities for all of the net new companies and net new ideas that have never come to bear because technology was a gap or the ability to build an MVP was a gap. I don't see that going forward. So I, for one, am excited and I'm ever the optimist, but I do think there's going to be far more upside to what AI brings to the table than the nature of what the media I feel leads a little bit too much with, which is the doomsday scenario of AI. I'm not being naive. There's certainly some things that will be automated as a result of AI, but I firmly believe if you look back on history, people and technology, history tells the story that humanity generally benefits more as a result of technology than less. And I do think AI will fit into that same category. Long-winded answer, so apologies, but there's an awful lot to that question.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about the software developer and so human in the loop, and we are producing huge, piles of code, and we are building functions, and we are building. I built, I lead a software development company, but I'm an attorney, right? I'm not a
Yeah,
software developer. I use Lovable to build from
yeah,
scratch a website about music theory. It had interactive pianos, everything, right? The whole
yeah.
thing. I did it all myself with Lovable.
Nice.
But with my background as an attorney and not being trained in software development, I wasn't able to read the code, not able to read the ins and outs, right? Not able to understand where something went wrong or didn't connect well to my Supabase or whatever. I
Yeah,
was fixing it on the fly, just by just trying to have a conversation with Lowell. So we're still at a point, I if I don't have the deep technical expertise, things are going to break.
yeah.
If I don't
Absolutely.
call an expert, things are going to break. I did that on purpose. I built the whole thing on my own on purpose so that I could understand what some of my clients will are starting to do, right?
Yeah.
And get it to a point where it will break, right? Um, but one of the biggest questions that a lot of people have is how are junior developers going to get their experience if now a lot of companies are not hiring juniors or they are using AI for a lot of what are your thoughts there? I know that Endava has a great program for training. It even has a school for software training
Yeah.
in Montevideo, the city where I live in.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on what are the skills that the software developer needs in the future and how we keep building the next generation of software developers in this AI ruled world?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, and it's something that I think is getting a lot of coverage being given to. It's the death of junior developers and so on, and I don't subscribe to that at all. And let me give you a little bit of the background on why that is the case and what we're doing inside Endava. First of all, forever in software engineering delivery, whether you're doing it inside your own organization or you're doing it with a company like yours or ours or whatever the case may be, every team of people delivering has a ratio, often of juniors, mids to seniors. And the whole preface or premises has been for a long time, you have a ratio of juniors to mids to seniors. The seniors are less in ratio to the juniors because you need to have some level of oversight. I still think that's the case in this new world order of software engineering. I don't think that's changed. Um, because guess what? Uh, Mids and seniors get older and retire. They leave your company. So if you're going to go, I'm just going to rely on completely mids and seniors, then what happens when when the inevitable happens and they leave? Because guess what? As much as a company is a great place to work, people leave still. They move countries, they move jobs, they move careers. Seniors move because there might be they've worked at a company for a long time and they fancy a change, whatever the case may be. But like we're all being open on this chat. You need to have a structure that supports your juniors becoming your mids and your seniors. That's a natural progression in any company, whether you're doing your own software engineering or you're outsourcing it to somebody else. So that still holds true. I don't see that being any different in this new world order. With that being said, though, you could argue, okay, so how is a junior going to get their start if the agentic AI is doing that for them? And a mid could just have an agentic AI platform deliver the job of what a junior used to do. But what that misses is you still need to have juniors come in to learn their trade because at the end of the day, software engineering is a craft no different than painting or a mechanic or a carpenter. Like I think with the best of intentions, none of us would purely leave AI to do its own thing without some level of oversight and governance. So juniors coming in, they still need to learn from those mids and seniors. They themselves need to grow inside their own career. And the ratios are still going to apply because not every company is going to be able to afford only senior people. That's just the business model falls down pretty rapidly, even in this new world order. The other thing I would say is, and this is not going to be that popular, and this is not about Endava, this is just about in general. I also find that, and I'm senior, so this is directed at me. I'm 20 plus years in my career. Anyone who's in the career as long as me, you go, not invented here syndrome is strong. You see this AI thing. I'm wondering if this AI thing is going to apply to me, or could I bury my head in the sand, pretend it's not going to happen and nothing's going to change? Whereas if you inject a youth who come in with passion and enthusiasm, and guess what? These people are AI native out of the gate because they've been in university with generative AI. So they come at these problems and challenges in delivering software engineering in a different way. And part of me, and this is what I'm saying, I'm seasoned myself. Part of this also holds those senior people their feet to the fire a little bit. There's a little bit of healthy competition in a host of juniors coming in, showing you how to do Python in an agentic way. And if you're senior in your job and have only done it one way, there's a little bit of an eye-opening experience that goes on and say, actually, these people are showing me the new world order. And from that perspective, I think it keeps a lot of people honest. So I'm a big subscriber in the youth coming in and still being jobs for people lower in their career. Now, that being said, certainly the skills that you need are important. You need to have a passion and an enthusiasm and an interest in the area because the speed at which things are moving, you can't just go, oh, I know this. I'm going to have a career in this for 10 years. The bar keeps changing, things keep moving, but the enthusiasm of youth, the passion of the 300 people that we've had join us in Endava in the country of Romania as part of our Dava X Academy, they're absolutely adding an energy and an interest to what we're trying to do. And I think that it can only be a positive thing. But if you're listening to this and you're junior and you're coming out of college in the next while, I'm a big fan of mindset. If you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, you're generally right. If your fixed mindset is I'll never run a 5K if you don't run. I'm a bit of a runner, so I always use this analogy. If you say I'll never run a 5K, you're probably right because you have a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll never get a job because I'm a junior developer and I'm competing in the world of agentic AI. You're probably right because you've got a mindset that says, whereas if you go the opposite and go, I'm going to be at the bleeding edge of the best and latest tools, and I'm going to talk in interviews about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and I'm going to have the best version of a GitHub repository that shows up how I'm using agentic AI. there'll always be companies looking for good people. And if you go into that with an open mindset and want to be the best at what you do, you'll still have lots and lots and lots of opportunities. And here's the last thing I'd say. Don't, you know, this, and coming from a company of 10,000 or more people, maybe you don't have to work at a company. Maybe the world of working at large companies is not going to be as appealing. We in me in my position, and you and probably in yours from a software engineer, we automatically think, oh, what we offer people to come in is a great offering. Maybe, just maybe, the situation's changing. Maybe the game's changing. Maybe if you're out there listening and you've got a great idea, jump on Lovable and develop your own prototype, develop your own MVP, gather some market impact. And guess what? You may never work for a company. You may work for yourself. I think the we are going to a world of micro micro entrepreneurship, whereby the barriers that have been in the past may not be there, because there was certainly a barrier in not being able to produce software that's no longer going to be there. But like I said in the last point, I think there's more upside and more opportunity than anything, because when you, as a junior, develop your idea, and to your point earlier, Matteo, when it breaks on you and you need help, there's still going to be a role for companies like ours. There's still going to be a role for large enterprise. If you're processing millions of transactions, an enterprise portfolio, it's going to be really important that you know that quality of the code is the highest level. So for me, and I might be naive in this for those that are listening, but I think there's more opportunity, more upside in this, and this is tied into the skills. Your enthusiasm, your passion, and being the best at what you do will still rise to the top. And I still think that's the case for juniors. And I also think that dynamic of juniors keeping the seniors honest is something that's worth watching as well. But don't look at this through the lens of the past, because I think that's the other thing. We're measuring what a career looks like in IT based on what we've known for the last 20 years. But what you need to think about is, what's a career in IT going to look like in the next 20 years? Because I'm telling you now, it's going to be vastly different than it has been up until now. Some things will stay the same, but not everything.
That was a great answer. You just gave me. I need to go back and find the snippet for the episode right now.
I'm long-winded on responses. That I'm known for, and those that know me that are listening back and this will laugh. I struggle to give a short answer to a detailed question. That's my thing, right? So hopefully this is useful for you and the listeners.
You do much better than you give credit yourself for. Um, Last question to you, Joe. So you're leading the AI strategy and more than 10,000 people under your purview in that sense. What skills are needed to succeed in a place like the one you are today? What would you say is the most important skill that someone like Joe needs to be able to, you know, succeed in the role, go through the week and survive and have things in the right place?
I think I touched upon already. I think it's less than one skill. I'm not going to say go and learn Python or go and learn how you deliver Python using Lovable or Windsurf or Junior or whatever the case may be. I think we are going to go to an era whereby your passion and your mindset are going to differentiate you more than anything else. If you are not passionate about this opportunity, you're going to struggle with it. It's also tied into the mindset. I'm a huge fan of, and I know I've talked at length about it, and I'll not go over old ground, but an open mindset is absolutely, I would argue, there's never been a more important time to have an open mindset than there is right now. So if you're into this space, growth mindset, open mindset, there's loads of books written. I won't say any one book, but if you're interested in this space, this is an absolutely hugely important time to have a growth mindset and to go after this from an opportunities perspective. Because the alternative is you go with a fixed mindset, you live a self-fulfilled prophecy, and I think that kind of leans into how you kind of show up in work and what you do, whether you work for a company or whether you work for yourself. This is a really interesting era for us to be in. But growth mindset, and the other thing about a growth mindset is you typically find something you're passionate about. If you're passionate about something, you'll enjoy it. You have to have fun along the way. It can't all be the hard graft. You have to enjoy what you're doing. But I would work on your mindset. And the last thing I would say is, because this is the part of AI can't replicate, at least yet, and we crystal balls all that and we talked about it, but you need to be also human about it. So emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is something you can work on. It's something you can grow as a skill set, but it's a lot of the time about having empathy, about involving and looking at something from a user's perspective. The best solutions are not always the ones that are technically the most advanced. They're very often the ones that meet a real human need, and that you fully understand what that is, using things like empathy and user mapping and other bits and pieces. But that emotional intelligence is the thing that's going to differentiate you from the pack. Your IQ to a certain extent is kind of capped, but your EQ is something that you can grow. And I don't care if you're doing software engineering or your world of legal or ownership of a company or anything else, a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, and working on your emotional intelligence, but find something you're passionate about, because honestly, you can't fake it, because it will grate you. It will wear you down. So less about any one skill, because I think we've moved away from learn Java and you'll be safe and you'll have a career. I don't think we can say that anymore. So that interest in having lifelong learning is an important one, but that's tied a lot to that whole growth mindset. So in summary, I would say it's a lot about mindset and how you show up, and less about what skills you bring to the table, because people like working with good, interesting, passionate people. So that would be my final thought.
100%. Joe, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope that we stay in touch and we get to do this again sometime in the future.
Sounds good, Matteo. Thanks very much for the opportunity and for reaching out. And I look forward to continuing the conversation in the future.